Welcome to Cyber Focus from the McCrary Institute, where we explore the people and ideas shaping and defending our digital world. I'm your host, Frank Salufo, and today I have the privilege to sit down with Yigal Unna. Yigal was Israel's National Cyber Director, was Director General from 2018 to 2022. Prior to assuming that role, which reports directly to the Prime Minister, he oversaw signals intelligence as well as cyber for Shabak or Shin Bet or Israel's internal security service. Came up through the ranks through 8200, has a very deep technical background and technical expertise, and thrilled to be able to sit down with Yigal today. Yigal, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So, I mean, obviously this is a very timely discussion, and as with all of our episodes, we want to make sure we shed more light than heat on some of the pressing issues democracies face today. And obviously we can't have this discussion without looking back to October 7 and the horrific Hamas terrorist attack on Israel, where over 1,200 lives were senselessly lost in Israel and 240 plus hostages taken. What I'd like to be able to discuss with you today is start with maybe when you came in as Director General of Israel's National Cyber Directorate, then maybe paint a little bit of a picture in terms of the threat we saw and where we see it going. And then I'd love to get into a deeper discussion around Hamas and Iran and their proxies and some of the cyber risk that poses not only to Israel but also to the United States. So we don't have to unpack that all directly, but just to sort of paint the landscape. So Yigal, you went into the NCD role in 2018. What were you thinking at that time, and what were some of the greatest challenges you had to assuming that role? And please, a little bit of explanation. I think it's akin to our National Cyber Director here in the United States, but if you can maybe explain a little bit about the role.
With pleasure, yes. So in 2018, I was already, after almost 29 years in experience in cybersecurity. As you mentioned, I joined the armed forces at the age of 17, after finishing high school a little earlier than usual. And since the age of 17 until 2022, all around 33 years, I was serving in the public service, in the national security apparatuses, and the last 4 years as Director General of the NCD. But I can tell you that until 2018, I wasn't too familiar with the term defense. I was on the more fun side of the equation. By the way, it's all part of the same shebang, but different roles and different emphases, of course. So after being equivalent to general in the Shin Bet building, in fact, I followed the evolvement of what you mentioned as the digital world of today. I've been there before the internet, been there before the cellular, the mobile, all of these kind of things. Kind of dinosaur. I'm only 52 years old, so imagine. This is how fast things are going and how technologies are shaping dramatically our lives. So I've been there when the facsimile was first entered into the signal intelligence world. Imagine that, not just a speech, not just a telex, but suddenly handwriting. And we are dealing with the Arabic handwriting and things like that. So it was a big deal. And since then, the like in poker, the stakes are just keeping piling up and raising. So when I finished the role as a general responsible for all cyber operation, SIG and cyber operation in the Shin Bet, I was called. I thought I'm out there at the age of 45 with a lot of experience, out there for the private sector, having fun, having funding, all of this. And then I was summoned to the Prime Minister back then and still now, Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he asked me to do something that we had a lot of debates in Israel, and that's referring to what you just asked about how to defend a country. Now, Israel is around 10 million population, but maybe the most or one of the three most targeted countries in the world, no doubt. And Israel struggled to how to build its defensive forces, cyber defensive forces. In 2012, excuse me, we opened the new bureau, a small policy and strategy agency directly under the prime minister, very small, but getting its power from the highest instance of the Israeli prime minister. And we learned that it's not enough when we need operational arm. So we built another agency called the Israel Cyber Authority. And it was in 2016. These two agencies, one operational, one policy, was struggling and fighting. I was watching little happily from the side, from the Shin Bet, because until there, all the responsibilities were of the operational Shin Bet, operational, let's say, equivalent to the FBI in many terms. But we realize, and that is a real miracle in bureaucracies, that the speed, how fast we realized, less than a year and a half, that two different agencies, one operational, one policy, reporting both to the prime minister, is not a good solution, and we converged them. And I was appointed at this point of beginning of 2018 to converge these two agencies into one, or take all the fingers into one strong fist. And touch wood, until now, it's 2024, I'm already almost 2 years plus outside this agency, but it seems to be working. Because you need the operational point of view, you need to touch reality. And we'll talk about reality in Iran and all the other threat actors, you name it, we have it. And also think about capacity building, about ecosystem, about science and technology, about everything that is related to this amazing world of cybersecurity, of digital security, now AI. I presented my first AI and cyber presentation back in 2018. It was one of the 5 pillars that we defined in the INCD for the coming years, alongside with the cloud, alongside with the aviation, cyber commercial aviation, and transportation and medical. And I remember that after 2 presentations about AI, when everybody looked at me with the glazed eyes and didn't get anything, I ceased to do that. The next time I showed the same presentation, by the way, with some updates, was last year. By the way, in NVIDIA, big conference in Tel Aviv in Cyber Week. And everybody said, wow, how come you have examples from 2017 and 2018? How long did you dig back? And I explained that, been there, done that. So yes, it's a hectic world. It's Israel is, unfortunately for us, on the front line. But the lemonade out of these lemons is that we don't have any other choice but to prepare and get ready and get better all the time. And INCD is one of the models to do that.
No, that's terrific, and I think it's very obvious that Israel punches above its weight in cybersecurity companies. You just look around; a lot of those unicorns came from Israel, and in addition to having the technical acumen, other small countries like Estonia, you see countries that have lived in tough neighborhoods have no choice but to be good in this environment. So,
speaking of punching above the weight, a few numbers that I'm very proud and also astonished to find out myself. But when I entered office 2017, Israel had around 20% of the global investment in cybersecurity defense. I'm not talking about the other side; it's negligible in defense. And Prime Minister Netanyahu, by the way, was bragging over any stage he was around the world that Israel is 0.1% of the world population, but we're 20% of global investment. And it was true, and I'm very proud. Not anymore. Since 2021, because of COVID-19, which is, by the way, a huge turning point in all cyber defense industry, we grew up more than double, 42% of the global investment. In nominal numbers, end of 2017, when I entered the office, it was $860 million, this 20%. When I finished office, January 2022, it was $8.8 billion, more than 10 times in nominal numbers, more than twice in relative numbers. And I must say that we used to say when I was in office that we're second only to US, but the truth is that we have numbers that we passed already the US, but biggest sister and so on. And in this kind, look, I'm still a meeting almost every week, and I'm not just 4 years in office, but also 2 years after office, and working with many, many startups. Every week, almost every week, I meet one or two new startups or companies I haven't known or heard before in cybersecurity. This is how large this is. We have around 700 companies in different angles, from Checkpoint and CyberArk and the big ones. Palo Alto is R&D here, but it's American company, but many, many Israelis working there, until startups in the garage that I like the early stages one. But one each out of 10 survives the first 18 months. But for Israelis, it's nothing. The other 9 that fall alongside the road are fertilizing the grounds for the ones that keep on going. So we have more than 700 working and a few hundreds that are struggling.
That's a very strategic way to look at the ecosystem, and I'm curious. Do you think that it can continue to grow at that exponential rate, and what would it take for that to in fact be the case?
Well, today in a past 2 happy, fun years out of office, also although my hair hasn't grown up back yet. I'm afraid that that's game over. But I deal a lot with the VCs, with the startups, early stages, and international projects. And maybe we'll talk about it later. But uh, the way I see it, the world is far, far from having the right working point in cybersecurity. We still see a fully too much fragmented market. You need to in order to working with governments, for example, for government for a small or medium European Balkan country, some of them, all of them, I think, NATO members, they need to work with a two-digit number of companies, cyber companies, in order to get an appropriate solution. And that's crazy because you need to coordinate, and this is one thing. Second, too many attacks still happen. You see the third biggest economy in the world, cybercrime. Why it's so large, bigger than the Indian economy? Because we're still in a lot of pain without enough remedies, without enough solutions to solve it. So whoever tells me, oh, let's look for the next buzzword. Cybersecurity is already. No. Unfortunately, I wish it was true for the benefit of all of us. The rise of prices, of cost of living because of ransomware is something that we all suffer from. And that is because we still don't have enough good cyber solutions, either in packing, either in bundles, either in everything. So, yes, by all means, it's still a long road to ride.
Excellent. Now, I want to pull the thread on where we see some of the emerging technologies in a second, but I want to, before I jump there, you sort of in your opening talked about the importance to understand offense to be able to improve defense. And in the cyber sense, red, blue, defender, blue, attacker, red. Would you do you believe, though, that the initiative still remains with the attacker? And do you envision a day where blue can genuinely catch up with the attacker? And difficult set of issues, yes?
Very interesting question. Well, it takes one to know one. That's a famous
Yep.
saying, and it's
True
absolutely
that.
true. But one of the reasons, referring to your last question, one of the reasons why Israel is relatively strong in cybersecurity is, okay, yes, we are attacked, so we're in the trenches, so we have a live experience more than anyone else. But it's also another thing. Because of our needs, we have an obligatory military service. So every young boy and girl at the age of 18 in my case 17, but they go to a military service of 3+ years. Until when I was joining the military, no cyber there. So yes, I went to the intelligence, but the first draft was to the pilot jets, jet fighters. And by the way, I was recruited there, and I needed to sign a waiver because I wanted intelligence and to do what I'm still doing. But everybody knew the best are going to be fighter pilots. Not anymore. In the past 10 or 12 years, the first draft of the military are for the cyber squads. So imagine that the best of every, let's say, thousands, a few hundreds boys and girls in every draft are taken by the cyber squads. They are already, many of them have 10, 12 years of experience at the age of 18. But this is how it works. And then they are trained and given license to do whatever you mentioned or you hinted. And after 5 years, because we keep them a little longer in the service, they get out. And then they find out that, okay, it's more difficult. And the US is making it even more difficult these days to practice whatever they practice in the military. But the good news, you can go on the other side of the equation, and there's a lot of business opportunities, ideas, and again, a lot of pain that needs new remedies and new solutions. And you can do crazy stuff. And most of my friends turned into this kind of things. Checkpoint, the founder, Gil Schwed, he wasn't practicing defense in the military. He understood how to mitigate whatever he was doing in his military service and build Checkpoint, a giant cybersecurity company after that. So this is the good news that, okay, once you understand that it's all the same play, the same game, but you need to adjust and run properly, then the business is enormous, and the understanding is always there. Now, the blue I think, is getting the upper hand already in many fields. The problem is that the balance always go to for the initiators who are the attackers. They have the surprise element, they have the reconnaissance and things like that element. But the fact that you see Israel, and I need to touch any wood I can find over here, is under attacks, crazy attacks. In my 4 years term, only 3 major incidents, cyber incidents, none of them critical infrastructure, none of them critical. One insurance company, one hospital, and one hosting and servers. By the way, they all got alerts in advance from the INCD, and they didn't act properly towards those elements. But imagine how many others were saved and didn't get any attack, and not because no attempts, but because of other things. And that gives you an answer. It is possible for the blue to have the upper hand, to have the initiative. It needs a lot of decoy, a lot of sweat, and working outside the boxes and outside the lines. But still, the defense can be much faster, much more aggressive, and much more sophisticated in the play, and they can win.
Well, Yigal, I'm happy to hear that. So the reality is the good guys have to be right all the time. The bad guys don't. So that's one of the challenges. They just have to be right once, and I think that will always be the case. But I'd be curious, before we jump into the threat landscape, I would sort of be curious in terms of where you see some of the big technologies coming down on the horizon. And I may be a little old school in this. I think technology changes, human nature remains consistent. Good, bad, it can just be done at scale, speed, and exponentially with technology. But I'd be curious, when I think of quantum and quantum encryption and the ability to basically keep all secrets and crack all secrets, that's a pretty big one that, if I'm in the national security space, I would be very concerned about. But when it comes to AI, I mean, and even advanced forms of machine learning, I think all of us are still learning what that could entail. And I'd be curious. AI goes both ways in terms of cyber. It can be used as a tool to enhance the defender. It can also be used as a means to enhance the attacker's approach. So if you can sort of lay out where you think some of that, where that looks like 5 years from now.
5 years. That's
3 years. How about 18 months?
3 months.
18 months.
Let's settle for 3 months. Well, I can tell you again from the facsimile back in the late 80s. Any new technology gets a new attack surfaces, a new ways to perpetrate and to hack and to cause damage and to abuse. This is unfortunately the nature of us human beings. So it needs to take a good look, because I'm absolutely agree with you about the nature of people. We are not really changed in a million years. We still do the same mistakes and repeat our own mistakes. And the human factor is number one problem in all digital security, wherever you look. Regarding quantum, well, I'm less, less impressed by this phenomena or new technologies regarding cybersecurity. It's in many times, in many terms, like the appearance of the first airplanes back in the 1940s, First World War, and things like that. So yes, it changed dramatically the battlefield, but it's still getting from one point to another point a little faster and getting a little bit bigger angle. It's not a teleportation. It's faster. It's speed thing. It's with limitation. You need airfield. You need many other limitation that everybody that travels in commercial flights feel them all the time. But quantum is just making faster most of the things that the old computers, the current computers are doing a little slower. You still have many encryptions that are not reached by quantum because they work separately or differently. So like in every new technology, yes, it runs over all technologies that are not fit to the new age or the next phase. But that's okay, because there are many technologies that do. AI, on the other hand, basically AI is imitating human behavior in not so many words. And this is a huge problem once we deal with the human factor, as I mentioned, the biggest problem in cybersecurity. So AI can and does a lot of damage today, already harnessed by the bad guys in imitating and looking for building a phishing, spearheading, and things like that, and spear phishing and many other aspects. It also harnessed for the other side. For example, finding flaws, vulnerabilities in software. Yes, people are still writing software until AI will completely replace us, and there's no problem and no program, no podcast, nothing. But until there, maybe 5 years, this is something that will encounter more and more. And AI is the biggest challenge, both sides, because it's also good for cybersecurity, for the defensive side, but it's a big challenge for us to adjust and to see how we can turn it a little to the better, because it's already abused.
You know, there are a number of ethical questions, algorithmic and everything else, but the truth is you either get on the bus or you get run over by the bus when it comes to AI, right? So rather than fight technology, it's figuring out rules of the road, figuring out some of the ethical conundrums we're all struggling with, and figuring out how to apply it. Because when you go back in history, every big breakthrough in technology, even in a battlefield application, it's not often the technology, it's how it's applied. Whether it's UAVs and then arming UAVs and then swarming UAV, you name the technology, it's often in the application. I want to ask you a very point. Do you envision a day where I can't envision a day where conflict will not have a cyber dimension to it. I think, all conflict, whether from a collection and reconnaissance and surveillance standpoint, or even as an enabler to integrate into warfighting strategy, doctrine, tactics, techniques, procedures, and the like. Would you agree with that?
Unfortunately, I agree even more that I think that, yes, we turn from kinetic to hybrid, kinetic and cybernetic. And I fear that the next phase will be only cybernetic. Look, why do we have wars? It's not about just killing other peoples, although it's in our nature, unfortunately. It's in order to have an influence on other government, or to get a political things, or get a territory even. You need to get in. You need the physical things, and there's someone physically pushing you back. So you need to shoot him. You need to tank battle him. Just look at Russia, Ukraine, and we get the idea. Once you think of it, with cyber, you can achieve those goals and means without shedding blood. The problem is still you can do that to the other guys, and if you are the good guy and somebody's doing it to you. Now, just imagine, let's talk about influence campaigns. You can today undermine and get over a regime, democratic regime, anywhere using cyber methods. I don't need to remind 2016 US presidential elections, because we have 2024 presidential elections, and we're just at the beginning of seeing the what's going on, and we would see more. And we're going to see that, and we're seeing that. Look, I hold a Guinness Book of Records regarding defending elections, democratic elections, 4 times in 2 years. The fifth time I was already enjoying a barbecue at home, but 4 times it was hell. It's endless operations, sleepless nights along many months, until you make sure that nobody can question the results and the process of the democratic process. And trust me, everyone everywhere is trying to distrust and smear and really suspect anything that it looks little off. And this is the problem. Why? Because in today's world, we have one side of democratic liberal societies. Usually, it's hard to find two democratic liberal societies fighting each other. Yes, they're struggling, they have conflicts, but no blood, no bloodshed. But on the other side, you see all the others can be terror groups, rogue countries, both Korea, Iran, and even I can name two superpowers that are less dependent on public opinion. They are not democratic at all, and less digitalized, and realize that we have a soft belly. We are much more vulnerable, and the asymmetry is crying out loud. So, for example, for Hamas and Hezbollah, and even for Iran, why to spend money on submarines or F-35 kind of airplanes and things like that, when you can harness 18, 16 years old, that everybody has, with a connection to the internet, and harness them to squads over squads of cyber fighters that cause damage with the influence campaigns and other campaigns. Now, you can get a country on its knees. I don't need to remind the April 2013 incident regarding the Syrian Electronic Army. They had conflict back then with the US regarding proliferation of chemical weapons or something like that. And this nothing worthless cyber squad of the Syrian regime managed to hack into the Twitter account of Associated Press, one of the biggest news agency, and in the middle of the day send a message or tweet, a fake tweet, that there's a big bomb explosion in the White House and President Obama is injured, which immediately caused a drop in the stock exchange that was $2-digit billion. Now, they weren't smart enough, and they didn't do 101 cybersecurity or cyber hacking and change the password. So the Associated Press social media guys realized that and corrected, and everybody saw that Obama is okay, no explosion. But imagine that they could have managed to do a little more than that and change the password and keep it. You can get economy like the US on its knees, and it's 2013. 11 years later, the potential damage that this kind of small groups with just internet connectivity and daring and understanding mind, and they do have that, it's asymmetry, it's not balanced, and you don't need divisions and tanks. The problem, our side, and I'm speaking on behalf of Israel, it's go the same. We're still limited and constrained to the old thinking of, yes, we need more tanks, more things. No, you can get a country on its own. You can overthrow even a dictatorship, maybe even more dictatorship, if you aim and cause damage without shedding blood, without causing catastrophic outcomes like in Japan in 1945, things like that. You can do that, but it needs guts. It needs a more innovative thinking, more creative thinking, and maybe
and bold leadership.
Yes, and some crazy cyber guys that whisper to the ear of the leaders, and we need more of that.
Yigal, I'm glad you brought this up because I think we take for granted autocratic regimes can use technology in a very powerful way, and I think it is incumbent upon liberal democracies and democracies writ large to be able to come together on this front, because I don't think we can take that for granted anymore. The reality is they can have massive impact, and you discussed disinformation and misinformation campaigns and perception management, and I think that's where data collection comes into play, to play with the models and refine them. And some people ask why, let's pick on China, the Communist Party of China is collecting so much data. It's to enhance their models. It's not just the data in itself, but it's to enhance their data models for artificial intelligence to further shape and influence ideas. There's a big debate playing out right now. There's a bill before Congress whether or not ByteDance has to divest of TikTok. I'd be curious what your thoughts are there in terms of some of the social media applications.
Oh yeah, I'm the one that banned TikTok or any Chinese-related ICT, information communication technologies, from any side of the Israeli public side, at least. We are not. We have a good relations. At least we had a good relations with China commercially, but it doesn't mean that we're opening our legs. And this is something that is making us crazy, because we see what TikTok is. It's a brainwash, very smart, very sophisticated, but it's a brainwash system. So how come you let kids to watch it? And for example, just look at the algorithms. Slowly but surely, they push messages that are absolutely crazy and should be forbidden. The complete lies, complete shaping the minds, and we don't need to take too long into history. Just at the beginning of the 30s and the 40s of the 20th century, what happened in Germany and other places where people were brainwashed. It can lead to a real catastrophe, global catastrophes, and we let that happen. And the U.S. is letting that happen. No, there's is a fight, a clear fight over data hegemony between, I must say, the dark and the bright, the white and black. It's very clear. There's almost no gray over there, and we need to take a clear stand whether we want an open, a criticized, a free internet, or algorithms that we do still need to compromise, with commercial side. But we need some policy, some constraints, some regulation that will take care of how much when you see an advertisement, you see the logo, you understand it's an advertisement. In social media, you're brainwashed. And in TikTok, it's even worse, because you're brainwashed to messages that are not in any line of any values that you and us and all the rest of the open democratic liberal side of the world is sharing. So how come? We need to stop that.
Yep, yep. And I hope to bring you on in the future to talk what those rules of the road and what that could look like, because that is, I think, arguably, I wish all presidential candidates or prime ministerial candidates were talking about these issues in democracies. We know, but it's not. But it should be a primary issue because it will affect our next generation, including our current, more so than probably any issue we're grappling with today.
Once we get rid of our basic values of freedom, it's not us anymore. It's something else that we don't want it.
Yep. And I don't mean to beat on this point anymore, but how much investment does China have in Israel? Are there concerns? Because you've got such a robust startup community. Is that a national security concern of yours, or you think it's being well addressed?
I think in this case, at least in this case, Israel woke up on time. And it was around 2018, 2019 that we understood that in some fields it's going to get a slippery slope, and we stopped it. For example, the cloud, the national cloud, is run by Google and Amazon, and those who lost the bid are Microsoft and Oracle. So you don't see any other vendors or cloud vendors around there, specifically not from China. And this is the case in most, if not in all, data world. We still have a legacy of one or two seaports. I think one seaport that was one of the triggers that we realized not too late, as I said, but there's a slippery slope that we need to stop. Today, we don't see, I don't feel any Chinese activity regarding gaining assets over here or something like that. I think after October 7, it's even less because they kind of took a side that is negative to Israel, and Israel is very aware of sentiments like that, and the Israelis have their say the foot on the ground once they feel that they are not wanted, or even worse in the case of this, as you mentioned, it's really a black and white thing regarding the October 7 for us. So
and Yigal, I think I knew someone who was whispering in the prime minister's ear. If it started in 2018 that you pushed back, I think we know some people who could have made that happen. So
I was the rightest wing in many terms in the government. Yes.
So I would like to sort of paint the picture in terms of the threat landscape as you see it today, both when you were in that role and how it's maybe changed a bit, and if you were to sort of rack and stack the actors that you were dealing with most, how would that look?
Well, lucky for me these days, I can speak more freely than I could have 2 years ago, and when we met a couple of years ago. Well, no doubts that number 1, 2, and 3, maybe even 4 in the list of threats is Russia. The Russia state, and mostly the Russian cybercrime groups that are some of them state-sponsored or encouraged or have some relations with the overall Russian sentiment. They are the highest level professionally. They are strong, and they are fearless, or they have the balls and the boldness to conduct things. I think after what we see in the Ukrainian-Russian war, they are a little pushed back. They encounter another power, the Ukrainians. But after the Russians, where we don't see an imminent or direct threat over Israel, at least, but over democracies, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
They are manipulating and working in this way, another way, with the IRA, with other agencies. We see that all the time. So put that aside. Iran, by no doubt, took the lead in the imminent threats over Israel since April 2020. This is one of the reasons that we were not surprised, or no shocks, or no big catastrophe like we had on the physical, on the kinetic side, from the cyber, and not because they didn't try, because we're already engaged fully in the trenches since April 2020. And now I saw even a Microsoft report, I think, that all their cannons are aiming towards Israel, but it's not new. It's from April 2020. After 2 months after Qasem Soleimani's departure, they had a strategic solution, decision to change, to shift their cannons. The thing is, the volume is very high. The level, the professional level, and the imminent threat that they pose is not too high because of we will still have an upper hand, strong upper hand, professionally and technologically in others. But the problem is the learning curve. And once you are engaged in the trenches, you learn and you improve. So are the defenders, but also the offenders. So Iran is growing an imminent threat, I think, not just for Israel, but for the Western countries. Israel is not the biggest thing for Iran. U.S. is, and what they call the big devil and the small devil. We're the small devil. Make no mistake, who's the big one? And they already have launched attacks over U.S. Again, not on a high level sophisticated, but harassment for financial institutions and others that are less. Some of them in the U.S. are less protected. So yes, you need to have an eyes on the ball, on a few balls. The Iranians and the Russians. Chinese is a different story for Israel. For the US, undoubtedly, maybe one or two. But as an Israeli point of view, Chinese are not posing a big threat over, wiping and causing damage or influence campaigns, but just stealing technologies and
Intellectual property theft, just the engines that keep democracies going. So,
exactly.
yeah.
So yes, a happy playground, joyful and happy playground. Yeah.
Yigal, what would you be advising U.S. CEOs? First, we'll go corporate and then maybe government. What should they be thinking right now vis-a-vis Iran, its proxies? There have been some incidents on water systems in the United States. Obviously, in Israel, water is gold, more valuable than gold, just given the need for water. What could we be? What would you be advising executives right now?
Well, that's not even an advice. It's a must, specifically after Colonial Pipeline. But yes, we are all C levels, even board members. They all have a marking, cut in case of a big cyber incident on their neck, and everybody must realize and understand that. Now, what you need to do about it is to begin to ask the right questions. Make sure that you have somebody that gives you the right answers, and if you're not sure, take an expert to consult with. But you need a good CISO. You need to make sure that this CISO has the good and right resources, and it's is not blocked by the CIO or by any other C level. Many companies already get the CISO reporting directly to the CEO. And if not, at least once a quarter to report to the board and to the C level directly, without any filters, without fearing of anything. So make sure that you take multiple solutions. Benchmarking is always good, but look for the next thing, and never get rest in this
Comfortable.
never get comfortable, because remember, it's always run. I have 3 boys, with teenagers and a little in the army, and they used to nudge me and to be chutzpah and say, "Hey, Daddy, 30-something years you're doing the same thing every time, every day." And so naturally, absolutely not. Every day, still today, every day it's a different story because of combination of technologies that are running fast and people that have crazy minds and innovate and invent new things all the time. This is cybersecurity. So if you have a CISO that is working only on working hours, get him to work in your competitors. If you have somebody that say, okay, let's wait after the weekend to patch this and patch that, kick him out. Things like that. You need to understand that everybody is in a front line. You don't feel it, but it's there, and it will bite you the moment you'll be not on your
Least
toes.
expected. No, that's good advice. And how about for our policymakers in terms of what we need to be thinking about, both in terms of the imminent situation you're grappling with vis-a-vis Hamas and its proxies, but also more generally when it comes to cyber, because I think you touched on a very critical issue, and that's democracies and autocratic regimes. And I'm telling you, we're going to be talking about this for a while, but if we don't do something about it for a long time, it will be too late. And this is the one critique I've had about democracies, which is the only society I ever want to live in, but we tend to react after something bad happens. We have enough to give us, there are enough warning signals in this environment. There's enough signal in that noise right now to take this seriously. But I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'd be curious what your thinking is there.
That's that's easy. You need an accountable, highest level officials, think tank, people, professional people that, again, in Israel and in not too many countries, reporting directly to the highest instance. In France, the best agency in Europe because they're reporting to the president and the prime minister. Less in the other countries. I don't want to insult anybody, but they know. And the model of a one single point, not only single, but one focal point. In Israel, we have other agencies, but they all under the umbrella and one accountable, one address. You need one address that is also operational. And unfortunately, I don't see that in the US. Although you had a giant step in building the National Cyber Directorate in the White House, but it doesn't have any operational. And you do have another, without naming names, agencies and executives that are still there. So it need to be a spearheading by one accountable with the power and getting it the reporting directly to the highest instance in order to push things forward. Pushing forward meaning that once there's an accountable one, everybody will address him and he can supervise and see what are the most relevant topics and things to address, whether it be misinformation or disinformation, whether it be other things, probably all of the above, but in different, priorities. This is the model that helped Israel to get out from the mess that we had, again, relatively fast, miraculously even. But
So one throat to choke is what you're saying here. So
that is not a political but professional, but on the highest level and sitting on all the relevant tables. I was part of the national security cabinet meetings and others, and I brought in the angles and the aspects of this point of view, and it paid itself. So you need that, and the U.S. is strong, a very powerful country in these kind of things. But you need to have a focal point to together to converge the efforts, different efforts. Yes, politics, people, I know. But once you decide and put your foot and get the right man or woman or the person to lead it, you see all the stars aligning towards one thing, and then things getting a little better. This is the Israeli model. It works for us. We need to touch wood, but it's challenge all the time. But it's still, after six something years, it is working. And this is something that the US and most of the world. And this is what, by the way, I do today, not in the US, but in other developing countries, including India and other places that still don't have the right format. I help them to close the gap and to build it properly in this manner. And every country, every democracy has its own things and issues, but cyber is global. And the pandemic, like COVID, is hitting everywhere and democracies are compromised everywhere. almost in the same manner. And this is something that we need to address, and not saying, no, it's not me, it's the other one, and let's wait for the legislation. Never wait for regulation legislation. Technology, they will always be after the fact. No, you need to run a little faster.
We covered a lot of waterfront and a lot of topics. What questions didn't I ask that I should have? What more should we touch on? I think we managed to touch on a number of key issues, but I'd be curious what I didn't ask that I should have.
How many days we have to this talk? No, we didn't talk about capacity building and the upper side or the brighter side of technology, education, awareness, things like that. I'm happy to be involved in some international projects and others. But
I can't let you escape without a workforce question. So what should the cyber warrior, cyber defender of tomorrow look like? Because we are a university, we have students, what should young Americans, Israelis, anyone in a democracy, what should they be thinking?
First of all,
to pursue this
awareness and being more critical, more aware of misinformation. Disinformation is something that is crucial for everybody. For the techies, by the way, mostly with the girls, we have a lack, a very dramatic lack of females, of women in the cyber workforce and high technology. Many reasons for that, but we need to balance it because we're missing them. The industry is missing them. But I think that the getting it in the 9th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade and up, and getting more and more classes. And the problem is usually the lack of teachers, but it's a kind of a egg and a chicken things. What comes first? Once you have enough students, you have students that graduate and get back to be teachers. Then will be a little more, we can close the gap between us to China and Russia, that they do that. But they do that on the wrong reasons, to take it to the dark side. No, we need to build the Jedi, the Force, for the good side with the national effort, with the right effort, and that will bring more equilibrium and the balance and the upper hand at the end, because our values are usually prevail.
Yigal, thank you for your service. Thank you for spending so much time today. I hope to be able to see you soon and give you our challenge coin in person, but thank you for spending so much time with us and truly appreciated.
Frank, always a pleasure. Anytime. Thank you.